Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Not in Our Towns. Continuing conversations, we're going to introduce you guys to Truth and Transformation, a committee that is part of Not in Our Town. Before we begin, we always like to acknowledge the land on which we are living. The land on which we are living is part of the ancient homeland and traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape people. We pay respect to the Lenni Lenape people, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in their homeland and in the diaspora. We also acknowledge the millions of enslaved Africans and their descendants on whose backs the wealth of this nation was created.
Great.
Not in Our Town mission statement. Not in Our Town, Princeton, is a multiracial, multi-faith group of individuals who stand together for racial justice and inclusive communities. Our focus is to promote the equitable treatment of all and to uncover and confront white supremacy, the system that facilitates the preference, privilege, and power of white people at the expense of non-white people, and pits racial and ethnic groups against each other by upholding hierarchies based on proximity to whiteness. Our goal is to identify and expose the political, economical, and cultural systems which have enabled white supremacy to flourish, and to create new structures and policies which will ensure equity and inclusion for all. Our commitment to uncovering the blight of white supremacy on our humanity, we take responsibility to address it and eliminate it in all its forms through intentional actions, starting with ourselves and our communities. Thank you.
Can you all see the slides?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we're really pleased to be here to present our work, our Truth and Transformation Committee. I have been engaged with Truth and Transformation from about 4 years, and now I serve as the chair. I'm really honored and very grateful to be working with this dedicated team of individuals. Many of them have decades of experience in racial justice work, and some of us are somewhat new. And I'd like to acknowledge the TNT members who worked on this presentation, providing ideas on how to frame it, providing any ideas on what to include, what not to include, and a lot of great guidance and feedback. So thank you all. And similar to the way we work, we are doing this presentation as a team. So you will hear from many of our members. Wilma Solomon will give a historical perspective of how Truth and Transformation got started, our ethos, our charter. I will give a flavor of how we operate as a team. We'll then give a couple of examples of initiatives which we have successfully completed. That will also provide you a view of the depth and scope of our work. Then Maria Cruz Garcia will talk about the Princeton resolution to designate Indigenous Peoples Day. Joyce Trotman Jordan and Surya Baliga will talk about the Princeton resolution endorsing the New Jersey bill for a task force for reparations to African Americans that we are currently, and then we follow that up with what we are currently working on. And then Linda Oppenheim is going to talk about other potential areas that we could address in Princeton. Then we'll talk about Shirley Satterfield's tireless work for decades, documenting and educating the Princeton community on its African-American history. And then I'll close with a summary. So before we start, I want to make a personal note. I've been attending these Monday continuing conversations for a few years. I have to be very thankful to them for this has been like a really great resource for me to educate myself, shape my thinking about how to contribute towards anti-racism. And I've also noticed that there are many times in our breakout room sessions, I sense that individuals would like to do something about anti-racism. So as you listen to this presentation, please start to think about ways you would like to contribute to make our community an equitable community. So we are extending an invitation to all anti-racists to join us. Now I'll hand it off to Wilma to give us an overview of Truth and Transformation. Wilma?
There you are. You're muted.
So sorry, I thought I had unmuted myself.
No problem.
I'm sorry. Okay, start again. Okay. Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's well. The work of our Truth and Transformation Committee is one vehicle through which Not in Our Town's board can fulfill our mission statement. The history and evolution of our Truth and Transformation effort has not been a linear process, and we are definitely a work in progress, learning all the time from each other and our community partners, questioning what is the best path now. What we called originally a truth and reconciliation process for Princeton was something raised years ago by a couple of our board members, but it really did not begin to take shape until 2017, when Roberto Schiraldi, who is a former board member, drafted a manifesto calling for the reckoning with the truth of Princeton's history. That history related to enslavement, segregation, and other injustices towards our African American community. And then to work towards repairing the harm and turning our institutions towards equity. This manifesto also called for the need to address injustices faced by the Lenni Lenape tribal nation who were living on this land prior to the establishment of the town of Princeton. Roberto advocated for this with key Princeton leaders at that time, including our mayor, our school superintendent, our police chief, and others. And then several members of our board, joined to create an actual committee to plan for next steps. We officially announced the effort of Truth and Transformation, although we called it Truth and Reconciliation at that point, 5 years ago in December of 2017 at a continuing conversation session when a panel that included board members Shirley Satterfield, Vern and Larry Spruill, who talked about their lives and experiences with racism in Princeton. And it was at the suggestion of our panel moderator, Dr. Ruha Benjamin of Princeton University, who pointed out that there can't really be reconciliation if there's no relationship to begin with. So we took on the name Truth and Transformation. We extended an invitation at that time to continuing conversation attendees to join our committee, and there may be some of you here tonight. And as a result, our group began to meet regularly, and we did so until the beginning of the pandemic. During the time we did meet, focused on building relationships and trust among ourselves and self-transformation, recognizing our own biases, the inner work that needed to be done first. Some action, though, was also taken, some outside action, including advocating for an Indigenous Peoples Day that we will highlight later. So beginning in the early months of the pandemic, a few of us did read, we met, and we did through Zoom, and we read and discussed books together, including Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad, My Grandmother's Hands by Resma Menachem, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. We pushed ourselves to face and share difficult truths, and this was to further our inner and our relational work. In the last several months, a smaller version of our Truth and Transformation group has come together, you can see us here, to move forward again, including drafting a resolution to support the New Jersey legislation establishing a statewide reparations task force, which you'll also hear about later. So as I said, and as you will hear, we are a work in progress. Even now, we realize our vision goes beyond addressing the Princeton community, and we are committed to an even broader scope. We look forward to expanding our community partnerships and invite you to join this journey of truth and repair. And don't expect this path to be straightforward or without bumps and obstacles. But together, we will help pave the way for the road to transformation to occur. Thanks.
Thank you, Wilma. Now, I'll talk a little bit about how we work. One of the first things is the community collaboration and consultation. It really does take a village to do this work. I cannot emphasize that enough. So we work with many organizations, institutions inside Princeton, outside Princeton to accomplish our goals. Many times we reach out to individuals as well. The Princeton Civil Rights Commission on the top right there, we have many goals in common with them, and they're a very strong ally for us. Some of our representatives attend CRC meetings. We communicate with CRC as we work through our initiatives as well. Tommy Parker and Fern Spruill, they are on the CRC board, and they're also members of Truth and Transformations, and their guidance on our work is extremely valuable. As a CRC board member and the Princeton Town Council president, Leticia Fraga is very supportive of justice initiatives and works to get these initiatives on the agenda of the Princeton Council meetings. We are very fortunate to have Shirley Satterfield on our team. She's also the president of the Witherspoon Jackson Historical and Cultural Society of Princeton. She provides us great guidance in our work, and we leverage that society's extensive work to understand the African American history and culture of Princeton. The New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, we have worked with them. We have consulted with the team. We've used resources from their site in order to, for one of our more recent accomplishments, and Joyce and Surya are going to talk about that, we continue to collaborate with them. We're also collaborating with our sister communities engaged in anti-racism, for example, the Lawrence Neighbors Together, and we are also working with individuals for specific topics. So the reach is broad. We definitely want to extend this some more as we work on more initiatives. So a little bit about how we work operationally, right? So first of all, to use a metaphor, we work like a jazz band. It's a very collaborative approach. Everyone pitches in with their strengths. Everyone leads in different ways, and everyone supports one another as is needed. So we hold meetings regularly on the second Sunday of each month. We have ad hoc meetings as needed, of course. During our regular meetings, we start off first sharing our experiences as relates to racism. As Wilma talked about earlier, this is an important part of the inner work and our own personal transformation that is necessary to do this work. So everybody brings ideas for changes. So this is, everybody brings ideas for change initiatives. There are so many things we want to work on that we have to prioritize what we want to work on in the near term. Based on what we have picked, we decide on the goals that we want to achieve. Sometimes it's acknowledgement only, sometimes it's education, sometimes it's institutional change, sometimes it's all of the above, or even setting the stage for institutional change, because the transformation is what we're after. And then each of us puts forth what we know about the topic. It may be there are other people in the community that have already worked something, taken some steps already. We want to collaborate. It's not about reinventing the wheel. We want to get things done as quickly as possible with as many collaborators as possible. And then we discuss steps to accomplish our goals. It may be that some research is needed. It may be contacting other organizations or individuals. Members will volunteer to own different tasks, and they keep everybody updated on what's going on. For ongoing initiatives, we also have check status every meeting. And if there's any help needed, we do get stuck many times. And when we get stuck, we have to come up with ways together as a team on how we are going to unstuck and then unstuck ourselves. And then, of course, we take a few moments to celebrate our successes. And then also to amplify that in the community, because when we work on these topics, we want to use that as an educational tool for our community to learn more about this. Finally, of course, with each initiative, we take time to understand what lessons we have learned and then incorporate that change back into how we do things. Next, we will use a couple of examples of our initiatives that we've worked on to give a flavor a little bit for how we work and also the scope and depth of the work and then what we have accomplished. Maria Cruz Garcia will now talk about the resolution to designate Indigenous Peoples Day in October. Cruz.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming today to participate in this conversation. I think that is very important as a community that we start to understand our past and we can move forward. So I will cover the Indigenous People Resolution from Princeton. And first, I would like to start to say why we need to have an Indigenous People Day. And basically is for many of us, Indigenous People Day represents the first step toward truth and reconciliation with the American history retelling in which Indigenous nation people have been misrepresented and left out of the history of the United States. So we believe that it is the first step toward justice, and we want to make that this celebration, at the same time reflection, help us to move forward, because the capacity that we are having in the United States to have freedom and happiness for all will not happen until we're reckoning with the races and the genocides that we did to the Indigenous people. So having Indigenous people is critical for the celebration and for the reflection. We really would like to understand that this is a day for celebration Indigenous people, their heritage, their culture, and their resilience, as well as reflecting the wrongs committed by European colonies, and we are today what we call the United States of America and their descendants. So I think that they engage in a conversation, engage in understanding the culture of the Native America or Indigenous people is critical to move forward in our nation. And in particular for Princeton and for New Jersey, we need to really start to recognize the history of the Lenni Lenape, the diaspora and the removal from our lands, and even the hope of the new generation that trying to really in some ways create a new start for all of us. So next slide. Okay. The other thing that we want to do is use the opportunity to remember and to do a homage for one of our members, Daniel Harris. He died 3 years ago, December 2019. But he was critical in making that resolution happen. He was a member of Truth and Transformation. He took the lead to make Indigenous people a reality in Princeton. He wrote letters to newspapers to educate on the need of the recognition of this day. He and other members of the Truth and Transformation make statements in the town council meetings. He working with the Princeton Civil Rights Commission to draft the resolution. And he was working with leaders like Cindy was making. Leticia Fraga was fundamental in this particular one. He worked with the pastor John Norwood from the Nanticoke Lenape Nation. And like I said, it was an effort. In all these things, we need a leader. And in this case, really, I think that Daniel was fundamental to that resolution. Next, please. So the resolution passed in September of 2019. After a year since the town council meeting was proposal, the proposal was made, and the resolution includes clause to acknowledge and honor the Lenny Lenape and the sculpture. In addition, articulate aspiration for Princeton to be actively anti-racist. And it also opened the door for further action to create a more equitable Princeton that we strive to be. And that is critical because it doesn't stop here in the resolution. It doesn't stop in the land and knowledge. We really need to go forward. And I hope that the people here in this conversation bring more ideas in how we need to continue achieving this knowledge for the Lenny Lenape. Next, please. So I don't want to, the resolution, I think that is in the Princeton webpage, any of you can get it. But basically here we are getting some of the summary. Basically what they do is respect and acknowledge the Lenny Lenape nation. Recognize that the forced diaspora is not that they left or is not that they have been selling in some way was forceful. The knowledge of land or the concept of land that they have it and the colonial people came here was very different. And we really need to go deeper and understand this truth and these realities. And even honor their ethic, their culture, their practice toward environmental sustainability. So I think that there are many opportunities for this community to engage with the Lenny Lenape in our region, in the region that we are living from there, and try to move forward. Next, please. So again, the Princeton aspiration in the resolution is to be supportive of this community. And I hope and I believe that this is more than just a word. We really believe that we are working toward that. And try to move and reject races and oppression of minorities and indigenous people. Next, please. So again, the resolution is ending toward recognizing the indigenous people the second month of October. And like I said, that is a day for celebration, but for reflection too. Really, it's a day that help to really understand and bring the truthful representation of the role of this community, the European community that form what is United States today. And like I said before, provide the impetus for developing educational opportunities, explore and celebrate the cultures and values of the indigenous people. I hope really that the Princeton with their university can eventually bring to a department for indigenous people, all these kind of things eventually, I hope, I dream that could be something that the Princeton will achieve. And this group is connecting with many other organizations to bring that kind of truth to the races and the in some ways what I will say, recognize that the Lenny Lenape is a nation that we need to recognize and deal with the past in order to move forward. Next one, please. So the next initiative will be the Princeton support for New Jersey recognition, the task force, and Joyce and I think that this Surya will talk about that. So thank you for allowing me to explain a little that.
I have to unmute. So here's a story. So we recognize New Jersey legislation finds and declares that our state's deep-rooted connection to enslavement has direct connections and implications to our present-day public school system. All right, take a seat, Val. Just sit with me for a second. In 1989, I took advantage of changing school districts. So I had worked in Trenton for the past 15 years and decided, I really need to see education from another perspective. So I had this opportunity and I moved from an urban school district to teaching and counseling in a suburban district. Well, the inequity was unreal. I said, holy crap. Came home after my first day of working in that suburban district, told my best friend, parents of my godchildren, you know what? Y'all got to get out of the city because our kids, not that they're not intellectually available to challenge children in the suburbs, but the resources and the parental involvement was so unequal, our kids wouldn't be able to compete. So all of us know that in New Jersey, our schools are funded by, we can all say it together, our property taxes. So if you live in a very affluent, well-resourced community, your children will undoubtedly get a very decent education. If you live in a city that has a low tax rate, like I currently do, the school districts are not that well. They're not that resourced. And parental involvement, having to work 2 or 3 jobs just to keep food on the table, make sure your jobs in school, like parents can't really attend all of the school meetings. So the one thing that I would like for you to do is, if you get a chance, is to look at the bill. I think that's the bill for Reparations Task Force, and just look at the legacy of, housing discrimination, redlining, and racial segregation, which, by the way, were all very legal. So when you look at the slide that's before you now, the Black Americans in New Jersey, there's a very wide discrepancy in wealth. And if you look at the communities in New Jersey, you'll see a very distinct difference between wealthy communities and poor ones. Gloria?
Hi. Yeah, next slide. So now that Joyce has very passionately and amazingly, as always, talked about the importance of having reparations, I'm going to discuss what's currently being done on the state level to make this happen. So as the slide says, there's currently a bill in the NJ legislature that would establish a reparations task force. I actually put that bill in the chat if anybody wants to check out the text. But one of the main things that this task force would do is to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans in New Jersey. So that's very important. And one thing I want to emphasize with these images on the slide is that they were taken in 2019. That may not seem like a long time, but that's a long time, because if you think about it, like in 2019, I'd barely even started my activism journey. And it just goes to show that movements like these take time, and we need to, take care of ourselves and of each other in order to make these movements last. And you can also see in these images that many of the groups involved were working in coalition at this rally. So we just really emphasize as Truth and Transformation that social justice efforts are most effective when done in groups. And one group that serves as a mechanism to get involved in social justice work is us, Truth and Transformation, right? Next slide. Okay, so Truth and Transformation's main accomplishment so far around reparations is getting Princeton Council to support that bill, the NJ Reparations Task Force bill. We did this in coalition with the Civil Rights Commission by drafting a 6-page resolution that the council passed on November 14th. That was really hard work to draft that resolution. We did it over the summer for the most part. But it was so rewarding to learn so much about the history. I would definitely encourage people to read it. I don't know if somebody else can find the link on the chat since I'm talking. but it's a really good resolution if we do say so ourselves. And we also, though, to give other people credit, we did draw from the bill itself and from other resolutions that were passed before Princeton's. There are multiple municipalities that have had resolutions passed. So that's really important to show support at the local level for something happening at the state level. And in any case, what did the resolution look like? So it outlined the historic and continued systemic racial discrimination that African Americans have experienced, and then it also endorses the NJ Reparations Task Force Act as a pathway to addressing this. And it was really exciting that our efforts also made the news. We were featured on centraljersey.com. I was actually portrayed in this article, and I was very happy about how I was portrayed. And I'll just read what I said. It's on the slide, and I feel that it kind of expresses the necessity of this movement further. So it says, one force that strengthens white supremacy is the lack of accountability around these systems of like white supremacy, right? Reparations is about acknowledging and addressing past and present harms so that we can begin to move forward in an equitable manner. Reparations is a step on our path to racial equity, and I commend the Princeton Council for continuing to walk that path. Next slide. Okay. We were actually debating taking the slide out, but then we didn't, because we were like, we need to show moments of celebrating and joy. So here is a joyful picture of many people involved with Not in Our Town and Truth and Transformation, as well as Jean-Pierre Brutus from the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. And I think it's just important to celebrate our successes in activism in addition to striving for greater equity. Okay, so ongoing initiatives. We have, as I just described, we have made really important progress through our collaboration with the Civil Rights Commission and seeing the Princeton Council support the NJ Reparations Bill. And now it's imperative that we turn to statewide activism and strive to get the bill actually passed in the state legislature. So Truth and Transformation has begun to work on this by collaborating with the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and participating in lobby days at the state level. And another Truth and Transformation initiative is to correct the Welcome to Princeton signs, whose claim that Princeton was settled in 1683 erases and undermines the existence of Lenni Lenape people, as well as perpetrates a whitewashed history of Princeton. We're working in collaboration with multiple individuals and institutions to try to right this misleading language.
So, where do we go from here? What history in Princeton or other towns needs to be acknowledged, celebrated, commemorated? Let's take a look at an example here in Princeton. Who here knows where Palmer Square is located? If you live in Princeton, thank you. If you live in Princeton or you visited Princeton, it's a pretty prominent site in town. Most people know where it's located or think they know where it's located, but they might only be looking at part of Palmer Square. It was actually one time when I was walking down Nassau Street, and it's just past Chambers Street, after the Nassau Christian Center on the north side of Nassau Street, I saw a plaque, as illustrated in the photo on the left, that reads Palmer Square, Princeton, established 1937. So on that building is actually where the square begins. The man who created Palmer Square is commemorated on a plaque in Tiger Park, which sits between the Nassau Inn and Nassau Street. It reads, in memory of Edgar Palmer, whose vision and generosity planned and built this square for Princeton. which he so loved, erected by his friends, 1944. Next slide. What these plaques do not acknowledge is that the creation of Palmer Square depended on the destruction of streets comprising part of the then segregated African American community and the displacement without consultation of its residents. Not in Our Town board member and community leader and historian Shirley Satterfield created the lauded heritage tour of the remaining community streets and the Witherspoon Jackson Historical and Cultural Society, of which he is president, and shepherded the efforts to make the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood Princeton's 20th historic district and to mark significant locations with historical plaques. I think her heroism has not at all been adequately recognized, and we'd like to take any opportunity we can to uplift her work. How many more locations outside the current Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood have significance for African American or Lenni Lenape history that should be commemorated? You see the picture of Shirley Satterfield, and from the site of the Witherspoon Jackson Historical and Cultural Society, pictures of some of the locations on her heritage tour and the locations that also display plaques. Not in Our Town purchased one of those plaques for the Princeton Nursery School.
Linda, it's me, Joyce. I'm going to add in, okay?
Please.
So, because I have several relatives that lived in the Jackson Witherspoon Street area, and I grew up, I guess I kind of grew up there as a child. And there's Aunt Shirley smiling at me. As a young girl, my Aunt Mamie would ask me to go uptown on Nassau Street, sometimes to purchase things. I hated going up there. I hated it, and I didn't know why. I didn't have the language to say that the racism that I was confronted with, the stares, the feeling of not being welcome, the feeling of being less than on Nassau Street, it just bothered me as a child, but I had no way of explaining it. But the minute I turned around to go back home, the minute I hit Witherspoon Street, turned down Quarry, or turned down John Street, I was at home. And why was I at home? Because that was a community that reflected me. The Jackson Witherspoon Street community is indeed a resilient community and has always been, but at what cost? Our mental health, our well-being. If you look at what Du Bois said about double consciousness, the charades that we all had to play during that time of growing up, Du Bois believed that African Americans lived in a society that was oppressive and devalued them as equals. And at the same time, the African American culture encouraged equity, equality rather, and dignity. This type of double consciousness forces a race to view themselves from the perspective of both cultures. So the charades that we had to play growing up, and the double consciousness of living in a very oppressive world where you're not valued, and then having to be resilient to come up with creating your own way of being. It was very, very, very taxing on all of us. And I thank Aunt Shirley for bringing that to life. And we're going to keep that story and that history alive for as long as we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for that powerful testimonial. It's really, every time I hear it, it's really hard to fathom what goes on. So I'm going to summarize a little bit. So we've provided an overview of truth and transformation, our charter, who we are, how we work. We've provided some examples of our work. There is a lot more to be done. Linda alluded to, gave a small snippet of that earlier. And with more people committed to anti-racism, we can do more. So we hope you'll join us. As Wilma noted earlier, don't expect the path to be straightforward or without bumps or obstacles. But together, we will help pave the way for the road to transformation. And it is personally very satisfying work. It is something that we are doing for all of ourselves, right? We want the nation to be a better place. We want our towns and states to be better and more equitable. So we're inviting you to join us. With that, I think I'm going to we're going to break out into the rooms. It's 7:45, so we'll probably come back by about 8:10 or so. Before we go into the breakout rooms, let me read the community agreements. Listen to each other respectfully so that each person has an opportunity to be heard. Take space, make space. People are encouraged to overcome their reluctance to talk. Take care not to dominate the conversation. Allow everyone to have equal airtime. Be careful not to interrupt while someone else is speaking. Please agree to respect one another's privacy by keeping this discussion and people's names confidential. We ask that you embrace the concept. Whatever is said here, said or shared in this room stays in this room. Please speak from your own personal experience to avoid making generalizations. White people may feel uncomfortable when a person of color shares a hard truth. They should understand that sharing these truths can be painful or even traumatic for the person of color. While we committing to centering these conversations through the lens of race, participants may, experience these conversations through a variety of lenses. We acknowledge intersectionality, the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. We make space for the breadth of human experience, so all are welcome. Here are the questions for discussion today. We ask you to open up your hearts and minds. So what are the truths, the full racial history of Princeton that you learned about? What are the truths of Princeton or of your town that you're aware of, that you would like to make people more aware of? What are the transformations in yourselves, your circles, your local institutions related to racial justice that you would like to see happen? And what are the transformations in which you would like to engage and contribute? So with that, I think we will break out into the breakout rooms. Kim?
Great, that's fine. And do you want to come back at 8:15, 8:20? What time?
Yeah, 8:15 should be good.
Okay, terrific. You shall now be receiving an invitation to join a room. We'll see you back around 8:15.
Kim, is there any way for me to join a different room?
Oh, okay.
Because there are so many like of us in that room. If not, it's fine.
Which room were you in?
Room 1.
Okay.
It might just be that there are a lot of us on the call though. So
I think there are. Okay. That's fine. Let me just remember how to do this. Move to 4. Okay. Did you get a new
Thanks.
thing? Yep.
For attending and coming with open hearts and minds, right? Our breakout room discussions were very lively. What I'd like to do now is, can you say like in 1 or 2 sentences, if one member of each breakout room, states kind of what is the highlight from your own breakout room? I think that'll be very good. Keep it short.
This is Caroline. One of the main points that came out in our breakout room is I think there was a agreement that there should either be a school or a rec center that is named after Shirley Satterfield.
Okay, that's a good one. Any others?
All right, I'll go. It's me, Joyce. We talked about how we all need to just work together. I had some folks from the Unitarian Church working with us, and they want to continue working with us. And our hearts are open, and we're willing to do the work. So, thank you, everybody that was in my room 3, and we have a lot to do, but we're willing to roll up our sleeves and do it. So we may get some new members. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce.
Natalie here. In our breakout room, towards the end, we talked a lot about preparing for the pushback that people will inevitably have when we bring up this idea of reparations and truth and transformation, and how to approach it with curiosity and a lot of education, and bringing them along the journey so that they can be more open and willing, and that this change takes time.
Anybody else?
I don't know. I didn't see Connie. Did you want to say something, or I'll? Okay.
You were taking notes, Melissa. I thought.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so well, we had a representative from the Paul Robeson House. I don't know if it's okay, Denise. I don't say your name. And Denise was very encouraging about joining. Letting her Paul Robeson group know about what's going on. And she was very happy to hear what we've been doing. So I'm looking forward to more of a partnership there. And she mentioned this, and also another member kind of also talked about it, is that there's always like 2 narratives going on, the white sort of whitewash narrative and the story underneath it. And that living in a town, if you live in a town, talk about curiosity, which Natalie just mentioned, it's incumbent on us to be curious about our history. This gentleman lives in Rocky Hill, and he realized, I really don't know. I don't know the real history of my community. And I know there are things here that are not being, that are not being told. So being open and asking about the history of your community. So I guess I'll just stop there with those 2.
Thank you, Wilma. Anyone else? I'd like to just mention a special guest we have today, Benjamin Salisbury. He's from Sumner, Mississippi. He's at the Emmett Till Interpretive Center there. And do you want to say a couple of words, Benjamin? Hate to call you out like this.
I'll try to speak just very briefly. Again, I want to thank you for the invitation, Cindy. I believe y'all visited, what was it? Like
Last week.
22nd, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And the conversation, that we had, was awe-inspiring. So with that, I'm just really grateful to even just be able to share space with folks that are, genuinely doing good work, right? And look, I'm just another person. Ain't nothing special about me. So to see folks just take the initiative and take and use the consistency necessary to stay together long enough for y'all to accomplish what you have is a model I think that the world needs to see and experience. So again, Ms. Sindu, I thank you just for extending the invitation for me to just kind of sit and listen and learn myself, because it's just always good to know that. Well, it's great to be among folks that care enough about people to put that care into a productive mechanism and act. So on behalf of the center, well, maybe I shouldn't speak on behalf of the center because it's after hours, but I'll do it anyway. We really do. We honor y'all for just taking on the work in your home and in your community. And hopefully we can continue to try to do some good work this way. So thanks again.
Thank you, Benjamin. And Benjamin is selling himself short. He's doing this in rural Mississippi, and that's a tough place to do this conversations work.
Sumner.
Thank you. Sumner, yeah. But I know it is Sumner, but Tallahatchie County is pretty rural, so yeah. So thank you, everybody. And I'll just announce the next month's continuing conversations. It will take place on Monday.
Oh, Sindhu, excuse me. Denise has her hand up.
Oops, I'm sorry. Please, Denise, go ahead.
I just want to say quickly that the Paul Robeson House, the 125th birthday of Paul Robeson is April 9th, 2023. This Martin Luther King's birthday, Dr. Joy is leading a teach-in and for educators in the community about ways Paul Robeson's life and story can be included in K-12 curriculum. So we're trying to make sure that we don't just talk about Paul Robeson. We want to make sure that he and his story is actually built into New Jersey schools. So if people are interested, I can send a flyer. He's invited broadly politicians, educators, and everyone's going to come together and talk about how and where Paul Robeson can and should be part of K-12 education.
Please share that.
Okay, I will.
Thank
I will.
you.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else we missed from any of the breakout rooms? Okay. So next month's continuing conversations will take place on Monday, February 6th. The Black History Month speaker will talk about the Lost Souls Memorial Project. By now, you probably know that slavery was part of the economy of every single state in this country. Even after states, including New Jersey, passed emancipation laws, it took a long time for the institution to be fully abolished. But did you know that in neighboring Middlesex County, a government official was responsible for a slave ring, kidnapping nearly 200 African Americans and selling them into slavery? Come to next month's CC meeting and we can all learn the story together. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.